I'm Munir Haddad, and this is Rob Haddad, and today we're going to talk about.
What's in Munir's LinkedIn feed, and a little bit of what's in my LinkedIn feed. But for sure, Sora, Paradox, shout out Brené Brown, some of our friends like Shauna Little and Ken Gibbs, as well as electronic arts.
Also, don't forget Matt Brown and Evan Britton.
Wow. Wow. What a show. Yo! We're here. I'm here. You're there.
We are actually recording video and audio in our little preamble towards whatever it is that we're doing.
Well, I do have a plan, so it's not so uncertain about what we're doing today. But I do see those numbers, not where you pointed, but certainly see them rolling. We're rolling.
We are rolling.
And of course, we also have unstable Wi-Fi.
Oh, that's a
What do
bummer.
I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do see you very blurry on my side of the house, but
So an
last time
improvement.
around, it's recording locally usually. It does pretty well. We'll see. If nothing else, we'll have blurry Rob and fix it in post.
Shout out to Descript.
Add to the script. Well, can we blame Descript for faulty internet?
Oh, I wasn't blind. I just seemed like a segue.
Oh, okay, good. I heard Rob, and this is what's exciting to me. We actually have feedback from viewers, and it was a topic of conversation briefly with us about why we started to do this, now ahead of schedule. Well, we actually had some feedback.
I had feedback. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
a good friend of mine, Matt Brown. Shout out Matt Brown. Much respect. He was curious about two brothers' interaction together. He's a younger brother, and also an older brother, I guess.
Okay.
He's both of those things.
Some might call
Um,
that a middle child.
yeah. I don't know if he phrases it that way,
Marsha,
but
Marsha, Marsha.
right. But he was definitely curious because he's heard a lot about you. I talk about you a lot and wanted to understand what our dynamic is, and remarked that we have a lot of the same mannerisms, which we've both heard for many, many years.
Now you can tell we're related. Is that
By our
nature or
mannerisms.
nurture? Nature or nurture? Both?
Yeah, well, how could you distinguish at this point in our lives?
I got Rob. I got from a viewer. I now know what Munir looks like with a beard. And the other thing I got was your brother looks a little bit like Jimmy Kimmel, and maybe that's where, so,
I've gotten Russell Crowe before.
all right.
I do
No
remember.
aspirations to do. So I think he was saying you look a little bit like, and so
I
therefore he
see.
was
I see.
saying I would be Jimmy Kimmel if I had hair.
I see. I have heard the Matt Damon comps for you.
Oh, well, that's not bald me.
Well,
Been
maybe
quite a
even
while.
pre Matt Damon.
That's right.
Not
Well,
birth, but since people knew his name.
but that's not important right now.
That's no, no, certainly.
So you were saying Matt Brown.
Yes. He was hoping that we would provide an intro,
Okay.
some context to who we are, what we're doing.
Okay.
Said that would be super helpful.
Okay. Well, I'm Munir Haddad. I am the co-founder and CEO of Kiosk, an international advertising agency. We would be called boutique by some, large by others. Most of us are in Northern California, but we're also in places in the UK, and we service clients throughout the world, mostly US clients, but globally. And I have a long and storied history or maybe it's not storied. I was the reason that Madden is there is that I worked on the Madden video game, and you can see that Madden is in that little corner over there and not on the big picture over here. And some might say that that was the start of the Madden curse. I blame a guy named Eric Whiteford. Eric Whiteford might blame someone else, but that's fine. And so that's the reference here. And I also worked at a large ad agency, and I love speaking to my brother. How's that? Is that too long? I think that's too long of an intro. Nobody cares.
I, I'm very interested. I didn't realize. Are you saying, and I'm Robert Haddad, Munir's brother, are you saying that Madden's photo on that cover is the first time it was moved to the corner, and that's the first player cover?
So this is the long and apocryphal story. So the first player to grace the cover of Madden was Garrison Hurst, who was a 49er at the time. And that was in Europe, not in the US.
Wow.
And the second player was Barry Sanders, also in Europe as the big image. But the first US player was Eddie George, and that was the first time that Madden moved to the little spot there in the cover.
So mind blown here, and maybe that story is familiar to some who engage with EA historical content. But why did you do player cover in Europe first? Is it lack of popularity of John, just a connection? There was more likely people would know the players, and John Madden's brand carried more weight in the US? Or
So, to be fair, I was not responsible for the product when those decisions were being made. I was assisting, and again, I'll shout out to Eric Whiteford. So, uh, but yes, John Madden is a fantastic former coach and an iconic broadcaster. In Europe, not so much. He wasn't on television in Europe. And the NFL at the time that he was a coach wasn't quite as popular as it was in the late 90s. And even then, it was only just emerging. Um, and so the decisions were made that if you're going to market an American football game in a market that isn't really familiar with American football to start, the retailers as well as the students as well as the local the local marketing folks were saying, you got to help us out because this isn't really going to work. And the other thing was respect for Madden. I mean, John was the reason that EA, and there's a documentary, a 4-part documentary on, I can't remember who aired it. I think maybe Amazon Prime. Great series. And the feeling there, or at least the way that they tell the story, and I'm not going to refute it on that documentary, is that Madden likes to win, and he was a winner. He was also tough, but tough because he could deliver. Um, and so the feeling was that because he liked to win, he realized that having his image on the cover in Europe wouldn't allow his product to win in the market. And so he was willing or accepting of the fact that he would take his face off the cover in Europe. And it was a bit of a test case for the US as well, because by the time this product came out, he had retired from broadcasting. So he was not even a broadcaster in the US anymore. And for our demographic, our discussion with players and retailers and the folks that actually would buy the product was that, Madden's a video game. Like they didn't know he was a guy. You talk to people about Madden, they're like, yeah, it's a game. And so we were able to speak to a fantastic John's representation, and they were upset but understanding, I would say. You know, you don't ever want to retire from your iconic. I mean, this is his name, right? It's like, and he built this thing, and we were very appreciative of that and respectful of that. And so the discussion was, you know, how can we make this work so that again you win in the marketplace? And I think that's where they said, okay, let us come back to you. They had the discussion and they agreed. They're like, you know what, to win, we agree with you. If that's what you're telling us, we'll accept this. And so that's how this was able to happen. Um, and the other, my problem on selecting Eddie George was that John had not seen Eddie play the year prior. And so there was a lot of discussion about, you know, he didn't want to put somebody he hadn't actually seen physically play on the field. That's how deep his investment and involvement with the product was. I mean, that's what made it so great. Is like he was invested. And so, you know, we were able to get through that because I do think he made one of the teams, like the all Madden teams at some point. It's just that he hadn't actually physically seen him play that year. But anyway, we so that was why he's on the cover. And he broke his hand, I think, that year, and we know all about the Madden curse.
Wow. I presume that's explored in the Amazon doc. I've been meaning to watch it. I can't believe I haven't
The
seen it, but
the curse is explored. I don't think they give Eric Whiteford credit for it, and he probably doesn't want the credit. And he, you know, Eric's a humble guy. He'd probably tell you that somebody else is responsible.
well, remarkable. Well, this was, I think that's a worthy introduction and background to your career and maybe why I revere you so much and why I like to share you with other people and your advice because you've been such a great mentor to me over the years, really from the earliest memories. And it's your ability to share context and tell stories and be relatable while also being informative and influential. So kudos to you on your experiences and leveraging those in your day to day life.
Well, Rob, I am humbled by your words. I don't know quite what to say, but you have been an inspiration to me watching you tell stories and hearing you talk about my ability to relate. Your whole career has been built on unearthing and finding stories and allowing people to have their voice. You want to tell us a little bit about that, or should I tell people for you? Because again, you're doing the same thing that Rob has the tendency to do, which is I prefer to be behind the camera and give people their shine. But you're on camera now, so you may as well tell us. Talk about this. You have always been a storyteller.
You know, it's interesting. I shared your sentiment about me being deferential. And that's surprising to a lot of people within my network who know me to be very outgoing and enthusiastic. And when I said my brother described my role in this as the question asker and almost the interviewer, they were astonished. So, but yeah, from an early age, dad used to write us handwritten letters from Beirut, and he would animate and illustrate, maybe not animate,
Annotate, perhaps.
annotate.
Yeah, like emojis before there were
um,
emojis.
Yeah, I love that. That's
It's
such a good,
exactly what they were. He'd put like little hearts or little thing like,
school bus. He
yep.
drew a school bus. He drew like maybe a stethoscope. I was in the hospital for my tracheotomy um, at age almost 3, and he was living in Beirut during a lot of our childhood. And so when we weren't with him in the summers, he would write us lengthy letters that, yes, contained emojis. That's a great way to say that.
They
Uh,
were.
and so I guess a way to connect was I would also handwrite stories from at least first grade on. And in middle school, with a group of friends, we borrowed somebody's parents' JVC or camcorder and would shoot movies. I played a serial killer in one. We did a Civil War epic with about 4 people. Uh, and by the time I got to high school, Sean Kelly, shout out to Sean Kelly, another mentor of mine who worked at NBA Entertainment for 30 years, maybe 30 plus. He taught a class at Tuckahoe High School called TV journalism. And we had a show that was broadcast over air called The Tiger's Eye. And I was an anchor on The Tiger's Eye and had, and I thought for sure that was the direction I was going to go in. Broadcasting was it. I applied to, I think it was Dick Stockton had a summer camp for sports broadcasters. Unfortunately, I was in my Dick Vitale era as a sports broadcaster, and having a teenage boy imitate Dick Vitale in a mostly empty high school gym was likely unappealing, certainly to Dick Stockton and also to the people in the audience who was watching these high school basketball games. And both Dante Johnson and Carter Perryman, who were elite athletes and basketball players on the Tuckahoe High School team, reached 1,000 career points. And for the life of me, I could not say thousand. I even stuttered on the thousandth. Um, and that whole broadcast, they may have done it in the same game. Absolutely brutal, and essentially was the end of my short-lived broadcast career. But what I would say to others, and as I've said to others, don't let someone else control your dream. And that's what I did. I did not get into the Dick Stockton summer camp for broadcasters. And I allowed that experience to say, you know what, I'm going to do something else. Tangential. I spent almost 20 years in sports production, documentaries for Major League Baseball. First start was at NBA Entertainment and thoroughly enjoyed that experience and realized that's a great hobby. It's a great passion to do on my own time because I am interested in it. But for full time work, it felt like I needed to evolve into more marketing and strategy and revenue generation, and got into social media and software.
That's fascinating, Rob. So you're taking your storytelling from creating documentaries to the storytelling about product.
Yeah, yeah, and solving people's challenges. And a lot of that is understanding what those are and seeing if I have something or the team that has produced this product has something that can help them in their daily lives. That feels appealing. And crafting interview questions for baseball players who didn't necessarily want to sit down and answer questions. It's it there are circumstances in which you're talking to people who don't necessarily want to be talking with you,
It,
even today,
right?
not just Major League Baseball
Sure,
players.
yeah.
And so being able to be empathetic to their challenges and understand that they might not have chosen to be on a call, somebody brought them on a call, and giving them space to kind of express how they feel is, or not express anything. And that uncomfortable silence is also something that, as a salesperson, you can deal with from time to time. But I will remember the short answers from many players who just did not want to be sitting across from me. And there's only so much you can do during those times.
Yes, but knowing you, you're able to relate to people or provide them with comfort. And, if you don't want to talk, you don't want to talk. And obviously, there are times when it's controversial if you say anything. And I actually recollect a story. I was interviewed on the radio, and I had a conversation with you, and you were concerned for me being a licensor of the league and the PA, and what I might say to a broadcast journalist that might be in conflict potentially with the goals of the league and the PA as a licensor of them. And I remember you were very concerned that I was going to speak too freely. And you did coach me, and I did listen. And I do recollect I said less than I might have about a couple of things. And even in our story just a second ago, I I am probably not speaking as freely as I might about this topic. And that's part of how, storytelling is somewhat shifted, I think, in this age where things can be so inflammatory so quickly. But your concern for both the product, the individual, the human, and the story, and your capacity to still get a story that doesn't have to be inflammatory or controversial is an art, and you have that.
Wow. Well, I think we've covered the bases with this love fest.
All right,
I
good.
appreciate I appreciate that sentiment and your love and support. And really, what I'm most curious about is, Munir, what's in your LinkedIn feed?
So, Rob, my LinkedIn feed has been full of Sora. And, we did just talk recently. So it's fascinating. We had discussed Sora when we last spoke, but Sora is definitely it's gaining traction and people are using it. People that have codes. I don't have a code yet. So I've been seeing people post, and I've been seeing people comment, and I've been seeing people talk about how revolutionary it is potentially for content creation, sludge, watermarking stories, and I think that the uptake though has been rapid, even with the fact that you need a code to get it. Like, I went and downloaded my Sora app on my phone, and I think there's a lot there. So let's start with Sora. I've got a few others, but Sora was one that I think that was
Yeah, we
big.
both certainly, there's no algorithm fog there. Sora is definitely in my feed as well. Evan Britton of Famous Birthday, shout out to Evan. I've actually never met Evan, but his name would come up a lot in my work with YouTube. And he posted something really interesting about Sora. And we've talked about this sentiment, which is creators building their audience outside of the feed and the emphasis on in real life and experiential. And I thought that was really interesting perspective. We talked about recently the ads from Airbnb, American Express, Google Pixel having to do with experiential and in real life. And I'm wondering how infinite content is going to impact marketing budgets, how democratization of creative in the way that Sora can do now is going to impact marketing budgets and spend, and what that means for in real life and experiential.
Yeah, it's the pressure on content creators. I as an advertising agency, we create content for others, and so the argument or discussion would be, well, why do I need to have your services to do something I can just write a prompt to do? And it starts to become then that familiarity with storytelling and the capacity to actually tell a good story, and then it's a curation opportunity. So I think the capacity to gain people's attention is a practiced art, and so you do still need to have specialists who understand the values because there's a lot of sludge that can get created, and it's not engaging then. At which point in time, now I'm just getting bombarded by content, and I ignore all of it because it's all crap. I don't know. Can we say that on a podcast?
It is
But
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so I think it's you raise a good question, and I worry about the volume of bad, irrelevant stuff starting to turn people off, and that then creates a different and something else in my feed discussion. But let's let you finish.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go in this direction, but your point about turning people off, it does, I think, get back to personalization and the proliferation of many more personalized community platforms, social platforms, as opposed to the aggregators. So, have we seen a saturation of social media? And is that the next to be disrupted the way media has been disrupted? And are we going to see the fragmentation of social platforms into micro platforms with the ability to essentially create infinite content? Does that mean the appeal of TikTok and Reels, Instagram Reels, to its community becomes lessened, and the community and our connections are heightened, and we develop individualized and personalized platforms where we start having our own communities?
Well, you say two different things that I think are diametrically opposed potentially. Like hyper personalization with infinite content means that all of a sudden your community is a community of one, like you and the machine.
It's
And you and
fair.
the machine are self reinforcing like your own sets of beliefs. But community, by definition, is a group of shared stories. And our capacity to have a shared reality is fragmenting. I mean, it I was having a conversation recently with a friend of mine about, I am not a religious person. However, I love the concept of church. Why? Because it's community. Everybody goes in the community. Used to be a lot, not everybody, but a lot of people in your community would be at a building listening to the same story, a sermon, sharing the same space, whether they liked each other or not. And that is community. That's a shared sense, shared story, shared community. And it is people in your neighborhood who you do business with, who you might, your banker might be there, the guy that sold you your insurance, the person that has your, the grocer. And you might hate each other from a real estate deal and the lawyer and whatever, but you're all in the same location listening to the same story one day a week. But it doesn't exist anymore.
I like that paradox. Our differences make us alike. And that leads me to a recent post by Brené Brown about paradox, which the timing is really interesting because I was preparing for an interview some weeks ago, and I was focused on the paradox of discipline equals freedom. And that's not something that I've always embraced or believed, even. It's something that I've really had to work on and practice, and not just practice the discipline part, but practice believing that discipline does equal freedom. So it was really interesting timing for that to come into my feed because it was supportive of a belief that I was really and have been really working on. But I'd like to hear what else has been in your feed.
So you mentioned hyper personalization, infinite content, and what that leads to is something else that I've been seeing pop up, which is it's something we as an agency have been talking about for a long time, which is we are marketing to the machine and the algorithm in order to get to the human. And so I was hearing that this was very much on Adweek topics all over the place. It's gratifying to hear that that's caught on, but we have been talking about this for a long time. You have to be able to get your ad to show up to your audience through the algorithm, so you have to understand the algorithm. But then once it does show up, and the algorithm might like something different from what the human does. So you've got to have this dynamic tension of, I got to make it likable enough to the algorithm, but also likable enough to the human. And that's kind of interesting. But we're in this world now where, again, with infinite content and infinite personalization, um, that algorithmic capacity to get to the n of one is important. And how then do you create a story or a platform or conversations that get through the AI or the algorithm to you, the individual? And then as a marketer, how are you able to encourage that? And then as a user, like maybe I start to have processes and systems that are filtering things for me at a different level. You talked about social media, but maybe they're OpenAI is eating the world, right? So the other thing they announced that's in my feed is Agent Builder. And Agent Builder allows you to chain together agents more easily, and that is eating up. There were several platforms, software platforms that had been developed in order to help you do that. And so they've kind of like come in and cut the legs out from those individuals. But it allows you to say, I want one algorithm or agent to research this for me, and another agent, once it researches it, to do something else for me, and another agent to like write me a summary. And that chaining of agents could also start to filter how you get content. Maybe I write an agent that helps me find content I'm interested in. But content I'm interested in, again, you have self reinforcement. Um, I've I don't know if I've written this piece yet, but in my mind, there's a piece going in my mind. We grew up in New York, you and I, and New York radio used to be, at least amongst our friends, people you'd say like New York radio sucks, except for maybe WLIR, which was like new wave out of Long Island and rebellious. But like the rest of like New York radio was very much on a short rotation of hits. And the reason was that the the value of New York radio was so high you couldn't f it up. Because if you f it up, like you're losing. Like so, you had like Z100 that played like 6 songs in rotation, or WPLJ, which played a different 6 songs, but in heavy rotation. And people would say, well, New York radio sucks because there's no variety. Well, you couldn't risk the variety. And what I worry about is that you get into this algorithmic like over optimization where all of a sudden, it's vanilla. And sorry to those people that prefer vanilla, but it becomes less interesting and unexciting. And I think humans like some level of uniqueness. And where do we get that from?
I didn't know you were going to be talking about this. And just yesterday, my man Ken Gibbs, who I call him the people CMO, just a brilliant mind and marketer, he said, do you think creators are making content for audiences or algorithms? Or do we think audiences and algorithms are one and the same?
That's a great question. I love that, Ken.
I put the mind blown emoji in the comments because it's a great conversation. It's a conversation that is probably not for today, for you and I at least, but I'd like to, maybe Ken comes on the show.
That would be great. I would love to have Ken on the show. I'm a psychology major, so that's fantastic, and I love technology. So, but this concept of a digital drip, basically. I mean, the algorithm self optimizing to what gets clicked, and we're just like rats on the lever, man. So the algorithm is an expression of who we are, but not necessarily who we want to be.
Wow, I like that. We should leave it there.
All right.
Do you have more? Is there more in your feed? I don't know. I feel like I'm
Uh,
sure there's obviously more in your feed, but
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple things that have popped up, and we're running long, but we can keep this going. So Sharpie and Newell Brands.
yeah.
Newell Brands is the parent company of Sharpie, the pens. They have been working on Made in the USA, and that made it to my feed. Um, I'll give you a little. Here's a little Sharpie. I have one right there on my desk. So
Wow.
they're
What kind
look
of
at that. See,
what sample size is this?
so they're everywhere, right? And so now they're made in the USA, and they're saying that they've been able to see great sales results because of that, and they're able to do it efficiently. And so that was something that popped up into my feed. Thought that was interesting. And then EA. So we talked about EA a little bit in the intro, but Electronic Arts was essentially brought private with Jared Kushner and a lot of money from Saudi Arabia, their private investment fund or public investment fund. And so that's made my feed. I'm a former EA employee, so I mean, I have a lot of friends or acquaintances or friends of friends, so that's made my feed. I don't know, did it pop up on yours?
Sure did.
So
Yeah.
that was one that is worth checking out. And then you, I think, were the one behind this one, Shauna Little and Belly.
Shout out Shauna. Shauna.
Shout
Yeah,
out to
tremendous.
Shauna. So you, I think, were the one that made this pop up into my feed, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And she has a quote, I think, about the riches in the niches, and you talked about infinite content and personalization. And so I'm going to read this quote that she had that I liked. She said, "One thing to consider: your next edge won't come from scale. It will come from building for niches that feel personal, not averages that feel generic."
I feel like that summarizes all that we've been talking about today in some ways.
So maybe Sean is another person we should have.
Uh, That's a great point. I love that. Jersey represent too. With both of these folks that we've mentioned today. Um, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. It's probably on their LinkedIn though.
You've just said it. It'll
Great
explain
minds
your
for sure.
it'll explain your latest accent.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate
All
that.
right. So with that, we can mic drop, I think.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Again,
Yeah, it
I'm
would be
Munir
great to
Haddad.
have. I was going to say it would be great to have Ken and or Shauna as guests of the show,
It would be great to have Ken and Shauna as guests of the
or
show.
some of your EA brethren.
We will definitely give. I'm sure we'll hear from some of them.
Amazing. Well, I'm Robert Dad.
Munir Haddad, been great to talk to you. We'll see you soon.
Bye.